Don't have sex. If you have sex, you'll die. You'll get sexually transmitted diseases and then die. Females, you'll get pregnant and complications will happen early, and then you'll die. So don't have sex, or else you'll die. Now imagine a sex educator coming in and actually telling you this. How many of you would actually believe them? Not a lot. Why? Because we know that there are multiple forms of contraception available to us, some of which we may not know the name. And those schools put a lot of emphasis on HIV. They lack the education of other common STDs. According to Kaiser Family Foundation Fact Sheet Sexual Health of Adolescents and Young Adults in the U.S., compared to older adults, sexually active adolescents and young adults are at risk of acquiring STDs, which attributes to a combination of our behavioral, biological, and cultural factors. So today's society's attempts to prevent teenagers from obtaining STDs or unwanted pregnancies, mainly by putting emphasis on abstinence. However, abstinence-only education in schools is ineffective, unnecessary, and can actually be dangerous, as it censors vital sexual information. Thus, comprehensive sexual education is a more proper way to inform students about sexuality. Today, I'll compare the differences between comprehensive sex education and abstinence-only education. Using these comparisons, there will be examples of why abstinence-only education is unnecessary. Abstinence from sexual intercourse is the most effective way to prevent one from getting STDs and unwanted pregnancies. However, unlike comprehensive education, who says it is one of the options, abstinence-only education says, well, it's the only way to go, which causes the differences between the two to be desolate. Here are some comparisons found from Planned Parenthood. For one thing, comprehensive education teaches that sexuality is a normal, natural, and healthy way of life. Advocates of youth reason that with the average age of puberty at age 12 and the marriage at age 26, and since 70% of 18-year-olds have had sexual intercourse, at least 69% of Americans agree that teaching abstinence only until marriage is just not realistic. I mean, it's like telling a kid, no, you can't have candy until after dinner. How many of them are going to be tempted? But just say, you know. But however, abstinence-only education uses a more fearful approach about sex, saying that the expression is outside of marriage will be harmful to social, psychological, and physical consequences. Alongside abstinence being an option, comprehensive education also teaches that consistent use of modern contraception will reduce the risk of STDs and unexpected pregnancies. According to Kaiser, about 1/4 of teen females and 18% of teen males use no method of contraception at first intercourse. Research has shown that those who reported to use condoms will use it more. Plus, with modern medicines today, emergency contraception Plan B is available at drugstores for individuals, but abstinence-only education usually provides no information about contraception other than exaggerated failure rates of the condoms, and provides inaccurate, over-exaggerated information about STDs, stating that they are an inevitable result of premarital sex. So I'm not far from saying that if you have sex early, you'll die. Basically, that's what they're saying. So this can be a danger to individuals just because if they were to unexpectedly have it, even though they said that they're going to continue with abstinence, they wouldn't be well informed to have protected sex, basically. Which with unprotected sex, there's a 90% chance of getting pregnant alongside other high risk of getting STIs. Comprehensive education includes a wide variety of sexuality-related topics such as human development, relationships, interpersonal skills, sexual expression, sexual health, and society and culture. Learning about sexuality does not only mean that we learn about sexual intercourse, it also means finding yourself. It's only a fraction of it. It's also about finding your own sexuality, it's another way of looking at different cultures around the world because it's a natural expression. But abstinence-only education says that it's immoral premaritally, and that it has negative consequences, and only teaches one set of moral values, which is that it's bad, basically. And most teachers, I found, that teach abstinence-only education are from like Christian school, mostly religious schools. Yes. So, let's see. As you can see, abstinence-only sex education is a very narrow way of teaching. It provides only one option of contraception and omits vital information about HIV, other STDs, and inflicts fears into the minds of followers about the possible consequences. So if one were to fall off their track of abstinence, they'd basically be doomed. Comprehensive sex education does not just say, don't have sex. It's more colorful than, you can say it's more colorful than the abstinence-only education, just because it leaves you with more options and the ability to explore sexuality. So as a final statement from Advocates for Youth, more than 6 out of every 10 Americans, which is 63%, believe that sexual exploration among young people is a natural part of growing up, and the best way to approach it is to provide information and services to help young people act responsibly.
All right, Ivan, what did you think?
That was a really cool attention grabber. I think it was really cool. There was a lot of good structure, but she relied on the cards like a whole lot. She would look up every once in a while, but she was like looking down a lot at her cards. But she seemed to know what she was talking about and everything. I guess maybe she was just a little shy. And but she got better at the end of that though. She started looking up a little more. But it was a good thing.
All right, the intro's fine. It sounds a little over the top, but it's kind of funny the way you're interpreting it. I'm not sure how representative it is of the abstinence-only education programs. If you had some material, for instance, from those curriculum, I think it would be helpful to use for comparative purposes. You do provide a preview of what your argument's going to be about, and I thought that you did a pretty good job on that. The signposting internally needs to be a little bit stronger. At the end of the speech, I think you needed a bit of a summary so that you remind us what the structure was, because I did think that it was not as clear internally as it could have been. Some of the examples are fine, but there's a lot of hypothetical situations here. Where's the data, for instance? You have one quote early on that talks about the lack of evidence indicating the success of abstinence-only programs. What we need is some data that shows that the comprehensive programs are effective. Have they been able to prevent teen pregnancies or the spread of I guess apparently we're now calling them STIs instead of STDs and VD and all those kinds of things. STI?
Yeah.
Sounds better than STD?
Well, it's sexually transmitted infection instead of disease.
Yeah, sounds nice.
Okay.
I thought an infection can be cured, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
a lot of the things that are transmitted aren't curable now.
It's one of those language things that comes along. People are always changing names for things for good reasons, I'm sure. But in 5 years, we'll look back at it and say, "Oh, look, he says STD, and isn't he quaint?" As opposed to VD, which is something. Some information on the effectiveness of those comprehensive programs in comparison. There's some good information about the frequency with which young people engage in sexual behavior. You had a good statistic about the number of people who are first-time sexual encounters actually involved in using contraception. One of the things that comes up is abstinence only, for instance, preventing people from learning about contraception, and I think that there's a big assumption there that needs to be documented. I think you'd have to be living under a rock not to have some exposure to that sort of thing. And when I say under a rock, I mean under a rock without access to television. I don't know. Without access to television, the internet, or mumble. You know, I could talk to myself all day long.